Alright, I kind of want to explain my backup system and what I've been doing, and also the new stuff that I've been testing out and implementing soon. So first, let me explain what I'm backing up. So this is my this terminal is my web server. Um, Pretty much all my application and database files are under this dataset, ZFS dataset web server files. You can see my DB dataset has a bunch of things under it, and these are different parts that MariaDB, which is a MySQL fork, uses. So it has an InnoDB dataset, it has where it puts its InnoDB logs, and MySQL dataset. And the reason I separate these, it makes things more complex, but it's because they have different record sizes. This one's 8 kilobytes, this one is InnoDB is 16, and this one's 128, which is the normal one that ZFS uses. And that's just because how MySQL writes things, it's more efficient to write it to a file system that has the same record size that it's writing to. So more space efficient, more efficient for writing and deleting. So that's how I do it. And actually, InnoDB is actually a raw device. It's a zvol. So in ZFS, you can just instead of having something where you write files, it's just a raw device that it writes out as a data set, and then other programs or whatever operating systems can see that as basically like a hard drive. And then so InnoDB actually is like its own file system that talks to this hard drive. So it skips a layer there of ZFS file systems. So it basically is skipping some layers by InnoDB talking directly to a raw device. So that's there. Still working on some things. I'm going to be upgrading to MariaDB 10 soon, and that'll actually make things a little bit better in terms of some stuff. So I'm not going to go into details because it's pretty complicated, but for the most part, yeah, pretty much all my web server stuff is under this web server files dataset. So I need to back that up, number one. Number two, I also have a bunch of stuff on my FreeNAS server that are mounted on my web server using NFS, and those are like my files and things like that, like the actual files, like personal files that these programs work with. So this is the actual PHP applications like OwnCloud, and then it mounts my NFS volume for the files that you save on OwnCloud. Basically, like the data directory for that is actually on here. So if I did, this is my FreeNAS server. You can see right here NFS files. This is actually what OwnCloud is using for its like where it stores people's personal files and stuff. I also have this. This is for the NZP application. This is where it stores its covers and some other stuff. I forgot what else it stores on there. But yeah. So yeah, so you can see here the application files are only taking about 338 megabytes. So it's actually not that. Applications in general aren't that big. It's usually the data files. You can see here my OwnCloud is taking 154, and it's actually like 250 gigs of files. It's just that I have LZ4 compression, so a lot of those files get compressed. So that's pretty much how I store my files. Now let me explain. For the most part, so that's how I store my files, and now this is how I back them up. On here I have a script that I wrote. I'm not going to show you this script, but basically what it does is it kind of pauses MariaDB from writing, and then it does a ZFS snapshot of pretty much web server files. This did everything recursively, all of these. So that's like an instant snapshot of those files, and then I just send that over. So let me do a snapshot right now. So this is my script right here. I'll run that. So that actually snapshotted the file system, and if you do GFE, and it actually also trims the snapshot, so I only keep 7 of them, so a week's worth. This might be a long video because I'm going to show you a lot of crap. Yeah, so you can see these are the snapshots I have on my web server, and they're mostly of the web server files dataset recursively. Like this is just like snapshots of each child dataset, but pretty much I keep 7 of these, and then that script deletes all the anything over 7, and it does it like a time thing. So this usually runs once a day, but since I just ran it, I've been testing a little bit. You can see there's more than just once a day here. And let me explain something. So now this is basically the cause of my issue and what I've been going around to solve. And the cause of my issue is I'm running NZB, which is a Usenet indexer, and it creates a lot of files because basically it creates around, the way I'm doing it, it's creating about 8 gigs of database per day. and it actually overwrites that. So it puts it in one table and then puts it in another and gets rid of whatever it doesn't need. So it's just constantly sucking in data and then indexing it and making it smaller and then getting rid of, flushing out what it doesn't need. Now the problem is if you take a snapshot, you keep everything that it had in that like temporary zone at the moment. So you can see right here, let's see, every day it's like this MySQL data set right here is about 2 gigs of extra stuff per day, just that snapshot is taking. And then the InnoDB one is keeping about a 1 gig. So these are actually like a day ago. These other ones were like just like a couple minutes apart, so they didn't create much space. So in the end, I think every day it's like 7 gigs worth. So that's kind of my issue, is that if I want to back that up offsite, then that ends up being a lot of data I'm sending. So I'll show what I'm basically doing. So first of all, I back it up to my FreeNAS server, because these files, my web server files, are residing on my my FreeBSD server. So I back it up. So I have a script here on here that I call it pull.sh, and I run that. And basically it does an SSH connection, asks this guy, what's your latest, it figures out what its latest snapshot is for that web server files backup directory, or backup data set, and then it asks this guy, what's your latest, or do you have that available? And then it says, okay, if you have that available, then send me an incremental snapshot. So I'll show that script actually. So that's already done because this snapshot was only a couple of minutes or hours since the last one, so there wasn't much data. So you can see it sent about 1.5 gigs at around line speed, around almost a gigabit right there. So let me just show what this is. So this is the script I'm using. I put some variables in there, and then this is the SSH command that I'm using. This is all local, so some of this stuff seems like it's insecure, but this is because they're in a point-to-point link that's within my LAN. This one is the pull.sh. And then you can see this is where it figures out what the latest snapshot it has on the FreeNAS server. And then it says here if this snapshot exists on the other server. So what it's doing is doing an SSH command. It's running this snapshot exists flag. And then my other server in its known host file, it knows that anytime you use the SSH key that this guy is using right here to run another script that I'll show. So it knows to run that script with this flag right here, and then with these variables. And then if that works, if it does have it, then it does an mbuffer. It starts a basically mbuffer to ZFS receive, and then the other side it does this flag sending incremental and whatever variables it needs. And then at the end, it trims it on the FreeNAS server. It keeps 57 of them, which means it'll keep the last 56 snapshots, which is 2 months worth, because I'm doing one per day. So, well, not 2 months, 8 weeks worth. So that's that script. And then let me show you what that looks like on here. So basically, it's running this script on this side. It's running flags on this script. I think they're called pull commands, yeah. So this is the one I worked on this before actually. So snapshot exist function is right here, and basically it parses those variables, and then it runs ZFS list, and if it doesn't exist, then it's going to send a failed error code, and if it does exist, then it's going to send a good error code, and that one if statement will work. Here's the ZFS send incremental flag. And basically what it does, it parses the stuff, and then it says what's the latest on my web server right here, and it will then do this incremental send, and you can see this -r means all the child data sets, so it does it recursively because my web server files has a bunch of data sets under it. This E just means keep some stuff compressed. It actually can save you on transfer, and then this I is the incremental. This capital I is incremental, which means send everything in between as well, and that's because I'm on a local link. I can send as much as I want, and then it sends it over mbuffer right there, and yeah, that's how that works. Okay, so I just ran it, but let me run it again, and you'll see that it actually does work, because it says, okay, this one does exist here, but it says, okay, is not earlier than it. When that incremental command runs, it says send from here to here, and it says, okay, those are the same things, ZFS send won't work. So you can see it's pretty foolproof. It's either going to work or it's just going to do that little error. And I've had this running for a few a couple months now, and it's been working fine. So it sends about 7 to 8 gigs per night from my FreeNAS server to from my web server to my FreeNAS server, backed up. So you can see here, this is how I have my stuff here. It's basically all on here, tank backup and then web server files, and these are the same, basically the same things, but on this tank backup root. And you can see how much space they're taking. So that's how I'm backing it up locally. So that's not that big of a deal, but this is what I've been working on this weekend. So now I want to back it up remotely, and this is a pfSense server that I'm going to end up putting my parents. It's actually just installed it because 2.2 just recently got released, and I'm going to install it probably next weekend. And now the problem here is 8 gigs is going to take a while to send on the internet. That's like 3 hours or something. Basically, I have a 10 megabit per second upload thanks to Comcast. So 8 gigs would take I think 3 hours. I calculated it. So you want to compress it first. So now these are the scripts I've been doing for that. So instead of that pull one, I have one I called push. So it's a very similar script. A lot of the variables are the same. Oh, I mean, these variables, this is my local IP right now, but this will eventually be the host name of my parents' house. And this one actually takes this one takes a flag, and that's of what data set are you trying to send, because I'm going to send over the OwnCloud files, NZB files, and I'm going to send over the, I'm going to basically have a triple backup of those web server files. So I have one on the live set, I have one on my FreeNAS, and then I have one remotely. And then of the OwnCloud files, I have a double backup. I have one on FreeNAS, one on at my parents' house, and then potentially the clients would have it synced to them too. So this script basically takes one argument right here, and then it says that's what live data set you're going to be sending. So this is how it works. I do the SSH command. You can see here I disable compression because I'm going to do it not with SSH. It's not as efficient. And then I have use a really weak cipher, ARC4, which is much faster to use. And then I figure out what's the latest on the backup, which runs a script there using this flag, latest snapshot. I'll show that script in a minute. And then it says, okay, does this latest snapshot exist locally on FreeNAS? And if it does, then run this stuff, which is, this one I'm not using mbuffer directly. I'm actually just sending it over SSH. And the reason is I want to send it, if I'm going to send it over the internet, I want it somewhat compressed because I don't want, not compressed, encrypted, because I don't want people reading what I have in there, because there's passwords in there, there's people's personal files. Even though on OwnCloud I actually have encryption enabled too, so those files are encrypted, but in those databases there's unencrypted stuff. So basically I'm doing a ZFS send. You can see it's incremental, but here I'm using lowercase I, and the reason is because I'm only planning on doing this once per week. So instead of sending 8 gigs per night, I'm only going to send it once per week, because it might be in more than 8 gigs. I calculated out it's about 13 gigs a week, but instead I'm just doing it one time. So it ends up being less total bandwidth and less, just didn't want to do the same amount of bandwidth. So what I end up doing is I just basically will be sending once per week and not the in-between snapshot. So not every daily snapshot will be sent over there, just the latest one. And then it uses this compression, and I'll explain why I chose this one. So this is essentially LZIP. It's just what FreeNAS ships is PLZIP, which is the parallel version. So it can use my FreeNAS is a dual core, so it can use both cores. I'm using this flag fast, and I'll explain how I figured that out. And then this flag receive incremental. So I'm going to show the other script that runs on my parents' pfSense server, which, well, eventually will be my parents' pfSense server. Okay. I could just figure out what script that is. I probably have it on here somewhere. Okay, I'm just going to figure it out. Okay, I think it's push commands, yeah. So here's the push commands. Very similar to pull commands, but different functions. Latest snapshot, what it does is it figures out it parses these variables, and then says, okay, it figures out what the latest snapshot it has available, and then it returns that to the other script. Then when it does the receive incremental, and if FreeNAS has that available, it'll send an incremental snapshot, and this is what it will send. it'll send it here, and then it'll parse these variables, and then it'll receive it right here with first I have mbuffer, which speeds things up slightly because the disk sometimes, the way ZFS works, it needs to kind of does things in chunks, so it's good to have a buffer somewhere. Then I uncompress it right here. You can see LZIP with the negative with the -D, which is decompress. How long is this video? It's been going for 15 minutes. Sorry guys, this might be a long video. And then I receive it, and you can see the -F flag. So what this does is it'll basically delete any snapshots that don't exist on the remote end. So I'm using this so that basically I have a cleanup line in my pull script. So basically that'll keep my FreeNAS it'll keep 2 months worth of snapshots, and then when it pushes it over here, it will also delete anything that it doesn't have on FreeNAS. So this should also keep 2 months worth, but it won't have the daily ones. It'll only have weekly versions of every 2 weeks. So essentially it's doing ZFS receive. So that's that. Okay. And then I'll show you. If you remember, I just pulled one onto here, so now I'm going to push one. This one takes longer because of the compression, but it's still on the LAN, but it'll be even slower once it's over the internet. So that's pull, which I showed you. Oh, I have to, this one takes a flag, so this one I'm going to push. Actually, let me check this. Oh, okay, this one's done. So, okay, so I'm going to do tank, bam, web server files. This is just comes out, and then this is mbuffer right there from the remote end, from this end right here. And that might take a while. I think it was a 1.5 gigs. So that might take a while. But the thing is that since it's compressing, it's gonna be less than 1.5 gigs. So yeah, that takes a while. But on this end, you could do. Sorry if it's hard to read. You can see here that it is receiving probably this one, because you see it's available here. This one that's 21, which is 9 p.m. But it's not yet available here, so it hasn't. The 9 p.m. one hasn't been put yet. So that's basically how that works. And so now this is how I came up with using LZIP with the fast one. I tested it out, and so assuming that my house has a 10 megabit per second upload, I did the PLZIP. It compressed the 13 gigs that I was trying to send to 2.74 gigs. That took 13 minutes to send, but 2.74 gigs at 37 would take 37 minutes at this. So basically this process would take 37 minutes over the internet, and that would be once per week. And then I tried PLZIP without the flag, which basically puts it at level 6 instead of level 1, and it sent it 2.7 gigs, so 07. So it would take less time to send at 10 megabits per second, but it took 54 minutes just to compress that 13 gigs. Because it compresses it, more highly compressed, it takes longer, more CPU time. So this would actually take 54 minutes. You can see it's whatever of the two is the higher length. So this was faster overall. So this is what, and it takes less CPU. So this is what I'm going to end up doing. And then I also tried basically gzip, but what FreeNAS ships is pigs, which is like a parallel version of gzip, parallel something gzip, and that compressed it to 3.4 gigs. It only took 7 minutes, so it took less CPU time, but because 3.4 gigs would take it would take more than this. It would take like an hour. So that would take longer to send over the internet and take more bandwidth. So you can see this ended up being my most efficient route. I could probably actually find a level between 1 and 6 that's where these two match up, the 13 minutes and 37 minutes, probably like level 2 or level 3. I could test with that more, but I didn't want to waste more of my time. So, and I'm okay with just using this flag. It keeps things simpler and it's less CPU time. So you can see this thing finished. It sent 350 megabytes. Even though that was 1.5 gigs, it compressed it down to 350 megs. So it compressed it almost 5 times, maybe like 4 to 5 times. And it sent it at around, whatever, 3 megabytes per second. Which is kind of slow, but yeah. So that's basically how my pull and push scripts work. I'm going to be running the push one once a week, sending remote backups to my parents' house, and I'm going to be the pull one I've been running once a day just to back up my web server. So that's how everything works. Sorry this video is extremely technical and extremely boring, but I just wanted to show that because I spent all day trying to figure out those numbers and writing these scripts to make them perfect. So now they are perfect and everything works, and I'm going to be backing stuff up remotely as well now. So, alright guys, if you have any questions about this, you can leave me a comment or something, but it's pretty complicated. So, alright, I'll see you guys later.